The Taliban, a name that echoes through history, evoking images of conflict, oppression, and resilience. Their story, deeply intertwined with the fate of Afghanistan, holds profound implications for global security and the fight against terrorism. This video delves into the Taliban's journey, from their emergence in the ashes of a devastating war to their dramatic fall and their persistent struggle for power. We will explore the complex factors that led to their rise, the brutality of their regime, and their intricate relationship with Osama bin Laden, which ultimately thrust them onto the world stage. Understanding the Taliban's past is crucial to comprehending the challenges and opportunities that Afghanistan faces today. Their story serves as a stark reminder of the enduring human cost of conflict and the urgent need for peace and stability in a region scarred by decades of war. The seeds of the Taliban's emergence were sown in the crucible of the Soviet-Afghan War. In 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, aiming to prop up a communist regime. This invasion triggered a fierce resistance movement, the Mujahideen, a diverse group of Afghan fighters united by their opposition to the Soviet occupation. The United States, seeing an opportunity to counter Soviet influence, poured weapons and funding into the hands of the Mujahideen. Pakistan, under the rule of General Zia-ul-Haq, also played a pivotal role, providing logistical support and training to the Afghan resistance. The war raged for a decade, transforming Afghanistan into a battleground of superpower rivalry. The conflict devastated the country's infrastructure, shattered its economy, and displaced millions of its people. By the time the Soviet Union withdrew in 1989, Afghanistan was a nation in ruins, grappling with the legacy of war and teetering on the brink of chaos. From the ashes of the Soviet-Afghan War, a new force emerged, promising to restore order to a fractured nation. The Taliban, meaning students in Pashto, emerged in the early 1990s, composed primarily of Pashtun students from Islamic madrasas, or religious schools. Led by the enigmatic one-eyed cleric Mullah Omar, the Taliban presented themselves as a righteous force determined to rid Afghanistan of the warlords and corruption that plagued the country after the Soviet withdrawal. Their strict interpretation of Islamic law, or Sharia, resonated with a population weary of war and yearning for stability. They promised swift justice, an end to banditry, and a return to traditional Islamic values. Exploiting the widespread disillusionment and the power vacuum left by the collapsing Afghan government, the Taliban rapidly gained support, particularly among the Pashtun population in southern and eastern Afghanistan. Section 4. Rise to Power. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. The Taliban's rise to power was nothing short of meteoric. With a potent mix of religious zeal, military discipline, and strategic alliances, they swept across Afghanistan, capturing province after province. Their advance was fueled by a combination of military victories and negotiated surrenders from warlords who saw the Taliban as a more palatable alternative to the infighting that plagued the country. In 1996, the Taliban captured Kabul, the Afghan capital, effectively ending the civil war and establishing their control over most of the country. They declared Afghanistan an Islamic emirate, imposing their strict interpretation of Sharia law on the entire nation. Their victory, however, came at a heavy price for the Afghan people, particularly women, who faced severe restrictions on their freedoms under the Taliban's oppressive rule. Section 5. A reign of terror, life under the Taliban. The Taliban's rule was characterized by a brutal interpretation of Islamic law which they enforced with an iron fist. Their regime was particularly harsh on women, who were stripped of their basic rights and freedoms. Women were forbidden from working outside the home, attending school, or even venturing out in public without a male guardian. They were forced to wear the all-encompassing burqa, which concealed their entire bodies, a potent symbol of their subjugation under the Taliban regime. Music, television, and other forms of entertainment were banned, deemed un-Islamic and corrupting influences. Public executions and amputations were commonplace, brutal punishments meted out for even minor offenses. The Taliban's reign of terror transformed Afghanistan into a pariah state, isolated from the international community and condemned for its human rights abuses. Section 6. The Unholy Alliance, Taliban and Osama bin Laden. In the late 1990s, the Taliban's fate became intertwined with Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda's leader. Bin Laden, expelled from Sudan in 1996, found refuge in Afghanistan. He forged a close relationship with Mullah Omar, providing financial support and fighters. From Afghanistan, bin Laden orchestrated the 1998 US embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. The US demanded the Taliban hand over bin Laden, but they refused. This refusal had catastrophic consequences for the Taliban and Afghanistan. Section 7. The War on Terror, 9/11 and its aftermath. On September 11, 2001, terrorists attacked the United States, crashing planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Nearly 3,000 people died. The attacks were linked to Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. President George W. Bush launched a global war on terror, demanding the Taliban hand over bin Laden. When the Taliban refused, the US launched Operation Enduring Freedom in October 2001. The Taliban regime crumbled quickly under the US-led offensive. By December 2001, the Taliban had retreated into the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Remember to show some love by subscribing.